Welcome back to the Rich Eisen Show. He is here in the flesh, the 10th commissioner in Major League Baseball history, Rob Manfred. Good to see you, Commissioner. How are you?
Good to see you too, Rich.
Thanks for coming in today. I appreciate that.
I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Let's jump right in with both feet, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Because Bryce Harper, the star of stars in many ways of this game, suspended for one game. Was he suspended for one game because he didn't vacate the premises, or because of what he did after not vacating?
Well, as with all the suspensions, it was really based on the totality of the circumstances. But you do mention the two things that were probably most important, that he returned to the field after he was ejected, and then the conversation, let's put it that way, that took place once he returned.
It seemed a bit one-sided to me.
Well, yeah, a comment, okay? We'll go there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But what if in appeal, not to adjudicate the matter here on live radio and television, but it is where he was essentially getting set to go into the clubhouse, and then that game-winning home run was clubbed right away, and now he's out there. It's not as if he was willfully not going back into the clubhouse.
Well, let me say this. I'm sure that if this appeal actually gets heard, and he decides to go forward with it, that, you know, whatever explanation he has for his behavior, John McHale, who hears those appeals, will give it full consideration. Look, I love Bryce's energy, passion for the game, but over a very long period of time, there's been certain lines that have been developed in terms of what's acceptable, and you know, we felt, without having the benefit of hearing the appeal, that a suspension was appropriate here.
So where do you stand on the subject of what he started? This is quite a firestorm in a way of what people have had a conversation about, baseball not being fun in a way, and being so old school that it doesn't allow millennials like himself to put on the show that he'd like to put on, Commissioner.
Look, I think that behavior on the field has within the context of the written rules, has always been something that each generation of players has developed a set of unwritten rules as to what's acceptable and what's not. I'm in favor of the great young generation that we have in the game today, developing a set of rules that will govern what's allowed, what's acceptable on the field. I expect that those unwritten rules will allow for a little more emotion. I applaud that. But I also know that this generation will develop a set of rules that maintains respect for the game.
Commissioner Rob Manfred here on the Rich Eisen Show. What do you think is your greatest challenge in growing this game?
I think that we think about it this way. Passing the game on to the next generation, we feel, is the most important issue facing the game right now. You know, baseball's always been generational. My parents passed it on to me, and we think it's very important that we work hard to make sure that the current generation of parents and grandparents pass it on to their kids. There's several aspects to that. A key part of it is youth participation. We've worked very hard in the last year at making baseball more competitive in a very competitive youth participation market. Try to encourage young players through our Play Ball initiative to play the game and stick with the game. But it also relates to the game itself on the field. Part of the Pace of Play initiative is driven by the desire to make sure that our game moves along in a way that's consistent with the way people live their lives in 2016.
And the pace of play, what more can you do? What more are you looking at that hasn't been put into play yet?
I think there's work to be done there. It's interesting. I was actually looking at a little report on the way down here to visit with you. I think maybe the most important thing is constantly reinforcing with players how important pace of play is. The very best results we got last year were early in the year. We were out visiting with clubs, meeting with players in the clubhouse, and they were very responsive. They did a great job for us in terms of moving things along. But like everything else, it slips back if you don't stay after the topic. So we're going to be out there again, talking to players, reminding them how important it is. But I also think there are rule changes that we're going to have to look at.
Like what?
We continue to experiment with a pitch clock in the minor leagues. The results in the minor leagues have been really positive.
Like, how does that work, though?
Essentially, you have a clock that runs from the time that the pitcher has the ball and can be in a position to throw.
Where's the clock located?
The clock would be in the minor leagues. The clock's located behind home plate, so the pitcher's cognizant of it.
The pitcher sees it, but so does the runner. I mean, if you've got a runner who knows that the pitch is going to have to come to the plate in the next 5 seconds, doesn't give that an advantage to steal a base?
You know, it could change the game a little bit, but I don't think changing the game is necessarily a problem. I think that if we could get down to the length of game that we're seeing in the minor leagues, it's about 240. I'm prepared to tolerate some additional changes in the game in order to get to that sort of a number.
So pitch clock is one. Is there another one?
Pitch clock's one. I think mound visits is another one. You know, clearly regulating the number of times the catchers and managers go to the mound could be something that's worthwhile. And, you know, look, the more aggressive list, and by that I mean probably further down the road, pitching changes are a huge issue. And, you know, the number of pitching changes that you see in games, really significant driver of game time.
So you're talking limiting the number of pitching changes you can make?
Well, I think that maybe you could do it a variety of ways. For example, we've talked about things like requiring a pitcher to face more than one batter. Something like that. But those are further down the road. But we're going to continue to at least think about and analyze changes to the game that could be more significant in terms of the way games played.
Commissioner Rob Manfred here in the Rich Eisen Show. And then just the minutia of it as well on the shifts, okay? Because I know defense, it's the only sport where the
Right.
defense has the ball, okay? Right. So pitching's one thing. Let's just remove pitching from the equation here. The shifts and defense brings about less offense.
Right.
Now, this is similar to me in the way what the NBA is dealing with the constant fouling of guys who can't shoot free throws, and the answer is we're not going to change the rules. Just shoot free throws better.
Better, right.
So we're not going to change. One way you could look at it, we're not going to change rules in the shift. Why don't you hit to all fields?
Well,
that said, though, I mean, Joe Girardi here in New York has really been pounding the table to get rid of shifts.
Well, let me say this. Our approach to date has been sort of the approach on free throws. You know, allow the shifts and figure that the great players that we have in the game are going to adjust to that and learn to hit the ball the other way. It is interesting. The number of times that shifts are used has really grown exponentially, suggesting that it is really effective and that Joe's right. It's particularly effective against certain types of hitters. So I think shifts are an issue that we will continue to look at. We're paying a lot of attention to what the clubs are doing. And, you know, it's kind of we have things going two directions on this, right? More offense means longer games. On the other hand, more offense means more exciting games, and there's a balance that has to be struck there.
Well, what would you do to legislate a shift, though? I mean, would you draw a figure in the dirt where you can't actually leave?
I think the rule that most people have talked about is requiring a certain number of defenders each side of second base. You wouldn't draw separate lines. You would use the existing bases for a delineation.
What do you think of that idea?
You know, I think it's an interesting idea. I do think that it would put some offense back in the game. I suggested that it's something we ought to look at right after I started. And I will tell you this. I got a lot of emails from people, including some emails that contained research papers with footnotes suggesting that my openness on that topic was a sign of low intelligence on my part. You know, a lot of people think it's a bad idea. I think it's an idea that we need to continue to analyze.
Well, because to me, it's just it gets a little bit out of hand. But I don't know how you.
Well, it kind of looks like a softball game, doesn't it?
Yeah, like there's a middle center fielder all of a sudden, and but then again, you know, it's just like if you're a pull hitter, you know, be a better hitter.
Right.
Try and go the other way.
Right.
And I've seen bases guys go from first to third because people aren't covering because they're on a shift. I mean, I've seen all of that. Can I get you to stay for another segment, please?
I will.
I appreciate that.
I will.
Commissioner Rob Manfred is going to stay here. We'll talk about what's going on in testing the players in the PED front, if you don't mind.
I will.
And more here on the Rich Eisen Show that also has Sean McDonough joining us in hour number 2 and Ray Ratto with Ben McKenzie, the commissioner from Gotham, coming in hour number 3. Still here in the Rich Eisen Show studio is an actual commissioner of Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred, still here on the program. Appreciate that. We were seeing in the commercial break Adam Silver, your colleague at the NBA, last night. He was giving out the MVP award to Steph Curry. Did you see that Steph kind of was hoping for a handshake and he didn't give one?
You know, it is hard to hold the trophies are all heavy. You know, you kind of you're short of hand. I can sympathize with Adam's plight on that one. I really can.
And I do remember also Commissioner Seelig, your predecessor, was giving out a trophy, and then there was one of your sponsors who, I guess, was having a moment as well.
Yeah, that was not our best award. That was not our best.
What was so you give out the trophy, right?
Right.
At the end of the year.
Right.
Is that the only one that you give out?
Yeah, just the World Series trophy.
That's it.
Yeah,
sure.
Usually, you know, like the Home Run Derby, there's a trophy that's awarded Joe Torre or Tony Petitti, the chief operating officer of
MLB, MLB Network. And by the way, congratulations that you got the Emmy Award once again for Best Studio Show.
Yeah, their studio shows had an unbelievable run. You know, really a credit to the work that Tony did originally and Rob McGlary, who runs the network now. We're really proud of the show. Got great talent on it, and they do a great job covering the game.
Thank you for mentioning the on-air talent.
There you go.
Commissioner. Very important to get that pat on the back.
Well, that's a good group of on-air talent. They really are great about the game, really love the game, and do a nice job for us.
Yeah, we had Al Leiter on the show yesterday talking about the Strasburg contract, $175 million for a pitcher that's had Tommy John surgery. Do you think that is something that your fellow owners or members will find troubling, or just part of doing business?
I don't see the Strasburg deal as sort of breaking new ground. I do think that there are a number of people in the game that get very concerned about the length, more than the average salary of pitcher contracts. You know, pitching is fragile, and being committed for that length of time is troubling. The other piece I really don't understand is, you know, if I'm going to commit $175 million for a player, I don't know why I have to give him the right to opt out after 3 years. You know, I'm guaranteeing him. You'd think you'd want a commitment coming back the other direction.
So is there something that you want to legislate on this subject at all?
Well, legislation probably not available to me. It would have to be in the form of a provision in the collective bargaining agreement with the MLBPA. And I think some of these individual contract-related issues will be discussed in the round of bargaining that's ongoing now.
How would you categorize your relationship with your PA? Because in my NFL world, it's just dreadful, the lack of trust that's going on.
I think we've had a really positive relationship with the MLBPA for a long time now. You know, going back to the early 2000s, obviously there's been some changes there, but, you know, we knew Tony Clark really well from his time as originally a player rep and then a staff person at the MLBPA. And I'm optimistic about our collective bargaining process. I think we're going to find a way to make a deal like we have the last 3 times, and it'll be a deal that, you know, everybody will compromise, but at the end of the day, it's going to be good for our fans.
Commissioner Rob Manfred here on the Rich Eisen Show. I'd love to hit you on a few things that's been in your inbox for a while. Okay. We really haven't heard much about the Cardinals hacking the Houston Astros computer system in quite some time. What's the latest on this?
We're really waiting for the sentencing hearing to take place. Once that happens, our access to information, I think, will be much greater. And this is a really serious issue, and I want to make sure that we know everything we possibly can about what actually occurred before I make a decision.
Okay. So in the suspension of D. Gordon recently for PED use, he took part in the game, got a game-winning hit in a way, took part in having a hand in winning a game for the Marlins, and then suspension is announced after the game. Justin Verlander took to Twitter and was used some choice words, to use the Bryce Harper phrase, saying that guys should be suspended on the spot once you test positive. You shouldn't be allowed to affect games while appealing. Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, look, I think Justin should, you know, express his views to the union that represents him. The way I see the issue is this. We negotiated really tough penalties in the drug area, the performance-enhancing drug area, 80, 162, and then life. And part of the trade-off with the MLBPA was to make sure that a player had a right to challenge the positive test before we sat him down. Once you announce that somebody has tested positive for a performance-enhancing drug, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. It's out there, and the players tarnished. And the balance we struck is they gave us really serious penalties, and what we gave back was the ability to make sure that the positive test was really positive before it was announced.
Mm-hmm. And so where would you like to take it, this process, then?
I think that I don't have a problem with the due process aspects of the program. I think it's really important in terms of the players supporting the program and feeling that it's fair. I do think that there will be conversation in this round of bargaining about penalties, whether, in fact, they're strict enough, severe enough that we have the level of deterrence that we want.
And what about what you're finding, what may be in the systems of these guys that is being masked, the 21st century world in which we live?
Look, I don't think masking is a huge issue for us. I think that, in fact, we've had a few positives early in this season, and I think my own view is that those were largely as a result of improvements in the windows of detection in the testing program. We're out there at the cutting edge in terms of the quality of our testing, and if we can make it better, and as a result we catch some people that are doing things they shouldn't do, I'm all for that. I think it's important.
And the series between the Marlins and also the Pirates, I guess.
Yes.
That you I guess postponed in Puerto Rico.
Well,
or is there, you've canceled it. What do you? Where does that stand?
We moved
right
the
now?
games back to Miami, is what we really did.
Okay.
I think it was an unfortunate outcome. I think that among the two groups of players, there developed concerns about the Zika virus. I'm not sure that those concerns were really well thought out, but we got to the point that, forcing people to go and play somewhere away from our normal sites where they had, whether they were correct views or not, deeply held concerns about this, didn't seem practical from our perspective. I do regret the fact that we're not going to Puerto Rico. We've worked very hard to sort of reinvigorate the sport in Puerto Rico. We have a nice flow of young players coming out of Puerto Rico all of a sudden, and I'm anxious to get back on track in terms of those efforts.
Rob Manfred, the commissioner here on the Rich Eisen Show. Can we expand instant replay to everything? Everything. I mean, fair, foul, not just home runs.
Well, we do fair foul right now. If by everything you mean balls and strikes,
everything.
I think no. Again, it's a balance. We want to get, and I'm going to quote my friend Tony La Russa on this, impactful plays. I think it's really important to get them right. Mm-hmm. But the game would be so long if everything were subject to replay that I think it becomes a problem for the entertainment product. I think we got a nice balance right now. I think the plays that really matter, you have an opportunity to get to review. And, while we work hard to make sure the reviews are as fast as possible, I don't think that instant replay has really been a time of game problem for us.
I'm sure you've noticed what the NBA's done with its report for the last 2 minutes of games. It's basically going through with a fine-tooth comb whether a call was made or non-call was a correct non-call.
Right.
Would you consider doing that for like the last 2 innings of a Major League Baseball game or a playoff game?
We already have a different rule for late in the game. Even if a manager has used up his challenges, the crew chief has the ability to go to instant replay, recognizing the significance of those late inning plays.
What I'm saying is putting out a report the next day of what you have found out based on your review of calls that were made.
Yeah, look, we already, after each game, provide an umpire with a complete review of his balls and strikes if it's a plate job, and explain to him which ones were missed according to our evaluation system. And they actually have to go online. We know they're going in and look at those pitches. We also give them a game-by-game report of what they've missed throughout the game. If there was a missed call, we send them video, have them review that. Where I would be reluctant to go is make that public. I think it just fuels the fire of, they missed it. And I think it's more important to work with the umpires internally to make sure that they're as good as possible.
Have you heard from Pete Rose at all lately?
I have not heard from Pete since I met with him before the decision in September. I know that, I've had a couple of requests through his representatives for him to participate in ceremonial activities, which we've granted. But other than that, I've not heard from him.
But so that matter, as far as you and your office is concerned,
it's closed.
Closed.
It is closed.
There's not even a percentage of the jar of a door that's open or anything like that.
Based on the circumstances and facts as they existed last year, the matter's closed as far as I'm concerned.
And now, before I let you go, you were, as I said, kind enough to come down to the studio. And you said you were listening to the show on your way down here.
Yes.
And you overheard me with my Chris Command Center wondering if we were going to take up your valuable time with something.
That's right, but I got cut off before I found out what the something was.
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to waste your time with it now, though.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Chris on the right, the man with the perfectly coiffed hair that looks like there's all that product in it, made the Chris to the left right there, who seemingly doesn't care how he looks, says
Thank you.
that it took a half an hour for him to wait for the other Chris to come down because he was too. How long did it take for you to shower in this whole process?
I only took a 6-minute shower, but
Okay.
I got in the room and there was an entertaining NBA game on, and I was watching playoffs, and I told him I wasn't ready.
Leaving his other guy to actually wait. Is that a violation of some form of code, Commissioner?
Let me say two things.
Yes.
I would never make inquiry as to the amount of time spent on personal hygiene. That's a personal matter.
Very good.
Number one. Number two,
Yes.
you should never be penalized for watching, and I'm going to be ecumenical here, sports. Whether it's our
Okay.
sport or another sport, you should never be penalized.
Even if another man is waiting for him?
You know,
I mean,
the other man has free will available to him. He can leave.
Brockman, the commissioner has ruled.
Well, there's also something
Against
called
you.
being a good friend.
That's true. That's true too. But I
And
think
a
we're
teammate.
we're just looking in the rule book itself. There is no code, I think, for what you're saying.
Well, the good friend is actually an important and interesting concept.
Wow.
I think that if you're a good friend, you wait for the guy, but you don't really complain about it afterwards.
Okay.
Well, the host complained. I just brought it up.
I might have stirred this up, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Manfred. Appreciate it.
I may have stirred this whole thing up. Thank you for coming into the show today.
I enjoyed
really
being
appreciate
here.
it. Oh, thank you.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.